Hello everyone, in this video I'm gonna show you to create Google authentication system using fastapi and reactjs. So to create the Google authentication system, I'm gonna use the third-party library called fastapi-user. Let me show you what we will learn in this video. So I'm gonna cover this the some of the topic. The first topic is that I'm gonna create the fastapi project automatically with the help of fastapi-gene package. Another one is I'm gonna set up Google project, which is basically useful to perform the authentication, Google authentication. From where we can get client ID and client secret key. Another one is that of the fastapi user. This is the documentation of fastapi user package from where you can learn more about it. So by default, this package only extract the email address from the Google. So we're gonna customize its endpoint so that we can get um email, not email, image and username from Google account. And the one is that as you can see, API documentation of FastAPI project. So by default, when I click on authorize, um, I will not able to see, I will not able to pass the access token here. I'm gonna override this schema so that it only support the barrier token. As we can see, it only support the HTTP barrier token from where we can pass the access token uh, from here. The last one is that I'm gonna connect the FastAPI project with React.js. So this is the topic that I'm gonna cover in this video. So please stick to the end to understand each and everything. Now let me show you the demo of this project. So let me refresh this page. And as you can see, here is the button, sign in with Google. Now let me click on this button and it asks us to choose the Gmail account from which we want to authenticate to this system. So now let me click on the Bhuwan Pandey and it's loading and you can see it's show the name of that user and the email of that user. And here is the image which I use on that Google account. So this is a way that we can get the user name and email from that Google. Now, when I click on sign out, I get sign out from the system. So now, without any delay, now let's create this project. So inside this directory, let me create a version environment with command P, not P, Python -yum vmv dot vmv. Now let me activate this virtual environment. Now let me install this package. Now this package get installed successfully. Now let me clear this terminal. So actually the FastAPI Gene is used to create scaffold a FastAPI project. You can learn more about this package by visiting this link. Now let me create a FastAPI project with this command. Uh, Let me press enter. So you can see the fastapi auth, the directory created for where there is the API models and the schema directory. and there is the main.py file, which is the main file, which contain the API of fastapi class. And so we're gonna create the authentication system. So for that, let me um, copy this and paste over here. So if you want to learn more about this package, please visit its corresponding URL. I'm gonna give the link of this the documentation of this URL in the description. Um, from where you can visit that. Visit my channel where I create the tutorial of this library. Let me press enter. So when I press enter, it's create the yeah files, the users and DB, which import the fast authentication like authentication backend, and the one is the Google auth 2. Let me install this fastapi user package. Basically, we are gonna use the authentication, so that's the reason we are installing this package. Another one is the SQLite, async SQLite. Now let me run fastapi dev. So we have only this item endpoint. This is the um, so this project is so this endpoint is automatically created with the help of this package fastapi-gene. So now let me uh, kill this terminal. So we only see the items endpoint. So to see the user endpoint, let me register that user router. So user router, and let me copy, let me include that user router. Actually, we don't need the item router. Let me remove that, and let me remove the item router. And from the items, actually, I don't need this file. Now let me run this server. So yeah, this router is not this um, file is not present. So let me remove that. Okay. Now let me refresh this page. And so you can see there is a different route which perform which have their own role like login, log out, register. But currently I'm targeting for only Google authentication system. So in this project, we only need these three route: authorize, Google authorize, Google callback, and user me. The user me, which show the user information. We show the authenticate user information like email is active, its super user is verified. So when I click on execute, it show me unauthorized. Actually, we need to authorize um, to get the data from this endpoint. Uh, Later in the video, we can see uh, all of this, all of this endpoint. So to perform the Google authentication, we need the client ID and client secret. Yeah. So now let me click So now let me create a Google project. Tomorrow we can get client ID and client secret. Now let me open link in new new tab. First of all, you have to create a project, Google project, to get client ID and client secret. So let me show you each and everything. Now let me create Google Auth client ID. So let me click on web application and fast API web uh, and authorize URL. So yeah, uh, we are gonna authorize this from the backend server, which is running on the port 8000. Another one is we're gonna redirect this URL on callback route. So let me pass the callback. So this is the route where we gonna uh, redirect the URL. So for now, I'm redirecting this onto callback route, but later on, we're gonna change this to the front end URL. So now let me click on create. So you can see we get the client ID and client secret. Let me create a file .env and let me paste over here. Now, so our Google redirect URL is this. First of all, let me copy the client ID and client secret. The client ID is, let me paste over here, and the client secret, let me paste over here. And for the Google redirect URL, um, so let me, so for the Google redirect URL, let me replace this with the Google callback route. So we created the Google project and get client ID and client secret. And the next step is that let me load this um, environment variable into the user profile. Inside models user.profile. Let me load that environment variable. So after writing this, we're gonna get the Google OAuth client ID and Google OAuth client secret key. Let me kill this terminal and again run this server. Let me refresh this page. So when I refresh this URL, it give me authorized URL. Let me copy this and let me visit this URL. So it asks to choose the Gmail account. Let me click on this Bhuwan Pandey and click on continue. But we see the internal server error. Let me see what happened. We get ID email error, the error while it is driving ID and email. So we have to enable this Google People API so that we can get the information from the Google account. So let me click on enable. So that API service is enabled to our Google project, which name is fastapi-auth. Now let me again refresh this page and let me visit this URL and click on Google account. Yeah, I know that we're gonna get the internal server error. The internal server error is due to that. So as you can see, the user table isn't created. So that's the reason it show this error. Let me kill this terminal and clean this. Now let me initialize the migration. So we're gonna create the LMB directory. Yes. So the LMB directory created. Now let me uh, do some configuration into this file. Inside model init, let me import base class, which is inside the db.py file. And env.py, let me import that base class and let me copy this one and so the our target metadata is equal to pastret metadata, and this is the name of the database that we gonna um use. So here we are um defining the database. Now let me create migration file. So let me see the you can see the migration file is created. Now let me import this class and now let me do migrate. So now it migrate the changes into the database. Now let me run this server again. Let me refresh this page and let me visit that authorized URL and let me click on that account And you can see we get the access token and the type of that token is barrier. Now let me copy this access token. So to authenticate the user into the system, we need the access token. So as you can see, first of all, let me refresh this page. And when I click on authorize, there is no section that I can pass the access token. So now let me customize the schema of this project so that it will ask the access token instead of username and password. So now let me customize the OpenAPI schema. Insert model user.file, and now let me remove this barrier transport, and let me paste the code that I copied. Now let me import the barrier STP barrier from fastapi from fastapi.security import STP barrier. Now let me ship that, and it's automatically get reloaded. Mm. Now let me refresh this page, and when I click on authorize, so it asks for access token instead of username and password. Now let me copy this access token and let me paste over here and authorize. So I get authorized into this system. Now let me now visit the user. Now let me call user/main point, and when I click on execute, so you can see the ID email is active, is super user and is verified of that user. Actually, I want to display username and image from that Google account. By default, this package only fetch the email from that Google account. So further, customize this callback endpoint so that I can get image and username from that Google account. Now let me move toward the code. Um, the callback route is defined inside user.pyma file. So now let me comment this route, and now let me save. When I refresh this page, I don't see the Google authorize and Google callback. So now let me define our one uh, route here. Actually, we need to customize only callback route, and we want to display the authorize. Uh, we want to display this endpoint from that package. So what it gonna do is that it remove the callback route from that router, which is provided by this fastapi user package. Uh, Let me import OS. OS. When let me refresh this page, and you can see we only get the authorized endpoint from that package. Now let me define our one callback route here. Now let me create a Google.py file inside API directory. Google.py file. So the Google.py file is created. Now let me write the code. So before moving into that code, let me show the callback route the forwarded by the first API user. So this is the callback endpoint the forwarded by the fastapi user package. So inside this callback function, um, it only accessing the ID and email from the Google account. So we're gonna overwrite this callback function so that we can get username, photos, along with email address um, from the Google account. So I'm defining the same method inside the Google.fi file. So here you can see this is the same function which is inside the fastapi user package. But instead of getting the Gmail and ID only, we are getting the Gmail, yeah, Gmail or email, both of them are same. So, and username and photo from the Google account. When I visit that function, so the some set of code which help to get the needed data from that Google account. So let me move to the uh, get ID email function, the provided by the this package. So uh, here you can see inside this function, it only extract the email from the Google account. When I click on this get profile, you can see in the parameter, it only pass the email address. But in our case, we're passing email address, names, photos, and the URL parameters so that we can get the names along with the photos from that Google account. The main purpose of this file is that we are defining our one callback function which get the email, photos, and the username from Google account. Let me save this. But we need to save the footage and username into our database. So for that, we have to override the auth. We have to override the auth callback method um, of this user manager class. Actually, the main purpose of this method is to save the username, photos, and email into our database. So um, let me copy this method and paste into our code here. So by defining this method, the username photos will save into the database. Now let me import the exception from the fast API exception. Yeah, actually for fast API is already defined. Let me uh, define over here. Now let me include that callback endpoint that we define in Google.py file. Let me copy this endpoint and paste over here. So inside API user.py file, mm, paste over here. Now let me import that router from the API Google dot API, not from dot Google router. Let me save this and let me refresh this page. Actually, we need to run the server. Yeah, it's we are getting the error that cannot import the get user manager from fastapi auth.models in the line number 17 of API Google. Now let me define this method inside uh, init. Defining here, it will now solve that problem. Now let me refresh this page and you can see this is the callback endpoint that we customize. Now let me create a model. Now let me add a field, avatar and username into the user uh, database. So to store the username and image URL, let me add a username and avatar field. And now let me import this map column from SQL alchemy.orm. Yeah. And the one is the stream from SQL alchemy from SQL alchemy import stream. By default, the value of username is empty, and as well as for avatar also, and the maximum length is 320. Let me save, and now let me create a migration file. For the to create the migration file, here is the command. Now let me give the message that um add username and avatar. Or yeah. So it created the migration file, and now let me perform migrate. So yeah, migrate. So there is a user slash me which only show email address. Now let me add username and avatar to this endpoint. So for that, inside schema, there is a users.py file. Actually, the items.py file is not needed. Let me delete that. And so for the user, inside the user read, let me define the username and avatar field. The username string and the avatar string. Let me save this and now let me refresh this page. Actually, I need to run the server. Now let me remove the item from the init file. Let me run the server again. And you can see the username and avatar inside this endpoint. So currently it is not authorized. Now let me now let me delete this database. So, and now let me run the server again. And now let me again run the migration. Sorry, I performed the migrate. And now let me run the server again. And now let me refresh this page from where I can get authorized URL, and let me visit this URL and click on this Google account. So I'm getting into the server. Let me see. Actually, I'm getting the exception that the fastapi.exception has no attribute user not exist. So I have done one mistake here is that uh, I have importing the exception from fastapi. Actually, that's not true. I need to import the exception from fastapi users instead of fastapi. Now let me save this, and now refresh this page again. Now let me move. Now let me visit this URL. Now let me select the Google account. So now I'm getting the access token. Let me uh, copy this, and now let me uh, add that access token. Click on authorize, close, and execute. Now you can see email as well as username and avatar from the Google account. Here we complete the setup on backend. Now let's move to the front end. Before moving to the front end, we are connecting this backend project to the front end. So for that, we have to define the course middleware. Now let me define the course middleware inside the main.py file. By defining this, by adding this origin inside the course middleware, uh, backend will be successfully um, communicate with frontend. For now, let me kill this terminal. Now let me close all the tab open. Now let me create the frontend project with the command. First, let me open new terminal here. Let me deactivate this environment. Let me create the front end project. The name of my front end project is React Auth. So npm create byte underscore lattice and React underscore auth. It created the project with name React Auth. Now let me select a framework. I'm gonna use the React and plain JavaScript. No, yes, and now it's installing the dependency. Now let me change the directory inside the React Auth and install a dependency. Now let me install the dependency with npm install. And let me install the React router DOM, which is basically useful for routing. By default, this React project is port as the port 5173. Now let me change its port to 3000. By defining the server port 3000, it will be redirect to 3000. Now let me create a in the .env file over I define the environment variable inside React auth create .env file. Now let me uh the authorized URL will be this one. Yeah, the backend URL slash auth Google authorize, and the callback URL is the Google callback. That's and this is the user me endpoint, which is the slash users slash me. Okay, that's fine. Now let me save this and let me close this tab. Now let me create the home page and login page inside SRC directory. Inside SRC, let me create a component and let me create home.jsx and login.jsx. The home.jsx inside the home.jsx, let me write the code. This is that what I am defining the function home, and here is the Google callback variable, which has the value of callback URL, and user me API has the value of user me endpoint. Here, what I'm doing here is that I'm parsing the first of all here I'm taking the token from local storage. Another one is the this variable which is show the URL of the redirect callback URL. Actually, we are redirecting um, here. We are redirecting to the Google callback. Now we're gonna redirect this to localhost 3000. This is the front end URL. Let me save this. So when we so you when user select the Google account, the user will be redirected to localhost 3000 instead of Google callback. This will be localhost 3000, and as I and it has the parameter state, and it has the parameter state and code which should be passed here. So you can see it has the parameter state and one is the code. And so this value should be passed inside this callback um, endpoint, which take the parameter code and state. So that's the reason we are taking the code and state from the URL, and it check that if the code and state is present, then it handle Google login. there is the callback URL. It's called the callback URL along with um, parameter code and state. And after taking that data, it checks that if that callback URL return has the response of access token, then it save that access token into the local storage and it redirect to the, the localhost 3000. And another one is called the function fetch user profile, which main purpose is to call the user main endpoint and display the user name, avatar, and email address to the on the screen. Another one is the logout function, which simply remove the auth token key from the local storage. Now now let me save this file and there is a login.jsx. Now let me write the code for the login.jsx. So in the login.jsx, there is the function called login with Google, which it actually is the button. When the user click on that button, this execute this function. So what it do is that it call the authorize Google authorize endpoint, and this endpoint return the URL, authorized URL, and it simply um, uh, redirect to that authorized URL. Now for the routing, let me define the Google. Now let me define the login and home inside the app.5 app.jsx. Inside the app.jsx. So what I'm doing here is that so simply I am importing the login and home function from login.jsx and home.jsx. And here I am defining the route for login and home page. Now let me define the styling inside admin.css. And inside the admin.html, let me change its title to fast API plus reactjs. I'm using the font awesome. So let me define the URL of the font awesome. Let me save this and now let me run this the front end server with the npm run date. And now let me run the backend server also. Now let me refresh this front end here. Now let me click on this button. So now let me change the redirect URL inside the backend project. Inside the .env file. Now let me change the redirect URL to localhost 3000. Now let me restart the server. Now let me refresh this page and now let me click on sign in with Google button and now let me select Google account and it's loading and you can see the username, email and user uh, image, which is taken from Google account. And when I click on sign out, it's automatically get signed up from the system. So in this way, you can create Google authentication system using fastapi and reactjs. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. If you have any query, please comment below, and I will post all the source code and the URL of the article into the description. And thank you for watching this.